You are not broke because you are weak. You are broke because your mind has been cluttered, slowly, quietly, and intentionally. Most people don't realize this because clutter doesn't feel violent. It feels normal, familiar, safe. You wake up every day carrying thoughts that aren't even yours, beliefs handed down, fears absorbed, rules you never agreed to, but obey anyway. And then you wonder why money never seems to move toward you. This audiobook is not about getting rich fast. It is not about hustling harder. It is not about tricks, hacks, or motivational noise. This audiobook is about cleaning your mind. Because before money ever enters your bank account, it enters your nervous system. Before wealth ever shows up externally, it either exists or is rejected internally. And right now, your mind is overcrowded. In this audiobook, Mental Money Reset, you will learn why being broke is often not a financial condition, but a psychological one. You will discover how subconscious habits quietly repel money, how emotional loops keep people stuck at the same level for decades, and how clarity, not effort, is the real turning point. Here is the punchline most people never hear. Money doesn't leave you because you don't deserve it. Money leaves you because your mind hasn't made room for it. Think about that. If this feels uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is the sound of old beliefs loosening their grip. Most people live their entire lives reacting to bills, reacting to stress, reacting to pressure. Reaction creates noise. Noise destroys clarity. And clarity is where money decisions are actually made. You don't need more motivation. You don't need more information. You need mental hygiene, because cluttered minds make emotional decisions. And emotional decisions are expensive. Every impulse purchase, every short-term relief choice, every I'll deal with it later moment, they all start in the same place, a mind that hasn't been cleaned. And no one teaches you how to clean it. From childhood, you are taught how to earn, how to obey, how to comply. But no one teaches you how to observe your own thoughts. No one teaches you how to notice why you panic when money tightens, why you sabotage momentum, why comfort feels safer than progress, why the future feels abstract but fear feels real. This audiobook exists because of that gap. We're going to slow everything down. We're going to peel back layers gently, deliberately, until you can finally see where the mental contamination entered. Not to blame, not to shame, but to reset. Because here's the truth most people miss. Being broke does not mean you are broken. It means your thinking has been overloaded with survival patterns that no longer serve you. Patterns designed for emergencies. Patterns designed for scarcity. Patterns designed for staying small and staying safe. And safety, when overused, becomes a cage. You don't escape that cage by fighting harder. You escape it by seeing it clearly. Clarity is calm. Calm is power. Over the course of this audiobook, we will dismantle the invisible habits that quietly drain your energy, your focus, and your financial future. We will replace urgency with awareness, reaction with intention, noise with precision. This is not a transformation that happens overnight, but it is one that, once started, cannot be undone. Because once your mind is clean, you stop making the same mistakes automatically. You pause, you choose, you respond instead of react. And that single shift changes everything. Before we go any further, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not defective. You are simply operating with a cluttered operating system. And operating systems can be reset. In the next chapter, we're going to identify the first layer of mental contamination, the one that convinces smart, capable people that struggle is normal and stability is rare. Once you see it, you'll never unsee it. And that's when the reset truly begins. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 2. The first layer of mental contamination. The first layer is the quietest one. It doesn't shout. It doesn't scare you. It doesn't announce itself as a problem. It whispers. And because it whispers, most people never question it. This layer is the belief that struggle is normal, not temporary struggle, not seasonal pressure, but constant struggle, the idea that life is supposed to feel tight, that money is supposed to feel stressful, that peace is something rare, fragile, and earned only after decades of sacrifice. You didn't choose this belief. It was installed. You absorbed it from conversations, from parents, from culture, from jokes people make without realizing what they normalize. Life is hard. Money doesn't grow on trees. That's just how it is. Everyone's struggling. Those phrases sound harmless. They're not. They condition your nervous system to accept pressure as default. And once pressure becomes default, your mind stops questioning it. Here's the dangerous part. When struggle feels normal, you stop solving it. You adapt to it. You build your identity around enduring it. You even feel suspicious of calm when it shows up. This is why many people self-sabotage the moment things improve. Not because they enjoy pain, because pain feels familiar. Let's slow this down. Your brain's job is not happiness. It's prediction. And prediction is easier when patterns repeat. So if your life has been filled with financial tension, emotional tightness, and constant just getting by, your brain labels that state as safe. Not because it feels good, but because it's known. Unknown calm feels risky. That's the first contamination. Now let's talk about how this shows up in daily life. You delay decisions that could change your situation, not consciously, but emotionally. You procrastinate on opportunities, not because you're lazy, but because stability feels fragile. You choose short-term relief over long-term improvement, because relief reduces pressure immediately. This is not a character flaw, it's conditioning. And it's why telling people to think positive never works. You cannot outthink a nervous system trained in survival. You have to decompress it. Now here's something important. Being broke for a long time rewires perception. It trains you to zoom in on problems instead of possibilities. It narrows your attention. It shortens your time horizon. You stop thinking in years. You start thinking in days, bills, deadlines, immediate needs. That narrowing is exhausting. And exhaustion makes clarity impossible. Which brings us to a brutal truth most people don't want to hear. You don't make your worst money decisions when you're stupid. You make them when you're tired. Tired of thinking. Tired of waiting. Tired of hoping. So you choose what feels easiest now, even if it costs you later. This is how people stay stuck without realizing it. Not because they don't want better, but because better feels mentally expensive. Now pause. Think about how often you've said, "I'll deal with it later. Once things calm down. When I have more energy." Those are survival phrases. They don't mean you're weak. They mean your mind is overloaded. And overloaded systems don't expand, they contract. That's why the first step in any real financial reset is not earning more. It's reducing mental noise. Because clarity is not something you chase. It's something that appears when clutter is removed. In the next chapter, we're going to expose the second layer of contamination, the one that convinces capable people that they are bad with money, even when the real issue is emotional conditioning. This layer is heavier, and once you see it, you'll finally understand why discipline alone never worked. Chapter 3, I'm just bad with money, the second contamination. This is the most damaging sentence people say about themselves. I'm just bad with money. It sounds honest, self-aware, even humble, but it's not truth. It's a mental shutdown phrase, because the moment you label yourself that way, your mind stops looking for causes and starts accepting outcomes. You don't fix what you think is your nature. And here's the reality no one ever explains. Most people who think they're bad with money are actually emotionally trained to use money incorrectly. That's not the same thing. Let's slow this down. Being bad implies lack of ability, lack of intelligence, lack of discipline. But watch what actually happens in real life. People who claim they're bad with money can manage complex jobs, can remember endless details, can plan for others, can show discipline in many areas. But when money enters the picture, everything collapses. Why? Because money is not processed by logic first. It's processed by emotion. And emotions don't respond to spreadsheets. They respond to relief, fear, identity, and comfort. If money was associated early in life with stress, arguments, shame, scarcity, comparison, then money becomes emotionally charged. And emotionally charged tools are used impulsively, not because you're irresponsible, because your nervous system is seeking regulation. Now, here's the key insight of this chapter. Most bad money decisions are actually emotional regulation decisions. Impulse spending isn't about stuff. It's about relief. Avoiding financial planning isn't about laziness. It's about anxiety. Overspending when things go well isn't about greed. It's about proving safety to yourself. Once you see this, the shame dissolves. And when shame dissolves, change becomes possible. Now let's talk about discipline, because this is where people get stuck. Discipline fails with money because discipline is a conscious tool. Money triggers subconscious reactions. You can't discipline your way through emotional overwhelm. You need to clean the emotional association first. Imagine trying to organize a room while smoke is filling it. That's what most people do with money. They try to budget while emotionally suffocating. No wonder it never sticks. Now let's talk about comparison, because this quietly poisons thinking. You see others doing better, you see lifestyles, you see outcomes without context. And your mind fills the gaps with self-blame. They're smarter, they're luckier, I'm behind. Comparison adds pressure. Pressure increases emotional spending. Emotional spending reinforces the belief you're bad with money. It's a closed loop. And loops don't break with willpower. They break with awareness. Now pause. Think about the last financial decision you regret. Ask yourself honestly, what emotion was present before the decision, not after, before? Relief, stress, exhaustion, loneliness, pressure? That emotion mattered more than the numbers. Now here's the reframing sentence that changes everything. You are not bad with money. You are emotionally untrained around it, and training can be redone, but only if you stop attacking yourself. Self-attack keeps the nervous system defensive. Defensive systems don't learn. Now in the next chapter, we're going to uncover the third layer of mental contamination, the one that makes people work harder every year, yet feel further behind. This layer is subtle, praised by society, and extremely expensive. It's called false productivity. And once you see it, you'll understand why effort alone has never been enough. Dear viewer, share your success story even if it is small. It can motivate other people to visit the comments section and read it, and it can inspire them. Also, don't be shy about asking questions, and perhaps someone with more experience or someone who has been through this will share the answer. Remember, it is only through communication that people become stronger and better. Thank you. Chapter 4. False Productivity, the most expensive illusion. False productivity looks impressive. It looks like effort. It looks like discipline. It looks like doing the right thing. And that's why it traps so many capable people. False productivity is the belief that working harder automatically moves you forward. It doesn't. It often moves you in circles, faster. Let's talk about how this contamination forms. From a young age, effort is rewarded. Grades for studying, praise for staying busy, respect for exhaustion. You learn that being tired means being valuable. So when money becomes tight, what do? You work more, you push harder, you sacrifice rest, you add hours. And when nothing changes, you blame yourself for not pushing enough. This is the trap, because effort without direction does not compound. It drains. Now here's the chapter that hurts to admit. Most people are not underpaid. They are misdirected. They are pouring energy into systems that do not return leverage. And because society praises effort, they never stop to question the structure. Let's slow this down. False productivity thrives on urgency, always busy, always behind, always catching up. That constant motion creates the illusion of progress. But progress is not motion. Progress is trajectory. You can move constantly and go nowhere. Now let's talk about why false productivity feels good. It creates moral superiority. I'm trying. I'm working hard. At least I'm not lazy. Those thoughts protect self-image, but they also block inquiry, because questioning direction feels like questioning identity. So people keep pushing, even when exhausted, even when resentful, even when results don't improve. Now let's talk about the financial cost. False productivity keeps income linear. More hours equals slightly more money. No hours equals nothing. There's no accumulation, no leverage, no breathing room, just constant output. This creates a dangerous emotional pattern. Rest feels guilty. Stillness feels lazy. Reflection feels unproductive. So people never stop long enough to think clearly. And clarity requires stillness. Now pause. Think about how often you've said, I just need to work harder. This is just a busy season. Once things settle down, that's false productivity talking. It keeps you moving so you don't notice you're stuck. Now let's talk about cleaning this layer. Cleaning does not mean quitting. It does not mean doing less. It means changing the question. Instead of asking, how can I do more? You ask, what am I doing that doesn't scale? What effort repeats? What effort disappears the moment I stop? These questions feel uncomfortable because they threaten habits, and habits feel safe. But here's the truth. Busyness is often fear in motion. Fear of slowing down. Fear of realizing effort has been misapplied. Fear of needing to change direction. False productivity keeps that fear hidden. Now here's the reframing sentence for this chapter. Being busy is not proof of progress. It's often proof of avoidance. Avoidance of silence. Avoidance of clarity. Avoidance of uncomfortable truths. In the next chapter, we're going to confront The fourth layer of mental contamination, the one that quietly convinces people that money changes who they are and therefore must be kept at arm's length. This layer is subtle, moral, deeply emotional, and until it's cleaned, wealth will always feel unsafe. Dear viewer, we strive to create high-quality videos for you. Please assist us in improving our efforts by commenting on what you like about the video and what you would change or add. We would be very grateful. Chapter 5. Money Changes You, the Moral Contamination. This layer is quiet, deep, and extremely powerful. It sounds like wisdom. Money changes people. Rich people are greedy. I don't want to become someone I don't recognize. These beliefs don't sound limiting. They sound moral. And that's exactly why they're so dangerous. Because when money is subconsciously linked to loss of identity, the mind will sabotage wealth before it arrives. Not consciously, automatically. Let's slow this down. Your mind is always trying to protect you, not financially, but psychologically. If you believe money makes people cold, selfish, disconnected, or corrupt, then wealth becomes a threat to belonging. And the brain will always choose belonging over abundance, every time. So what does it do? It finds reasons to avoid accumulation, to spend quickly, to stay relatable, to stay safe, not because you're irresponsible, because you're loyal to an identity you never chose. Now let's talk about where this contamination comes from. Often it's learned early. You watched money create tension, arguments, distance. You saw people change when they had more or when they lost it. So your mind formed a rule. Money causes problems. And rules formed in childhood are not logical. They're emotional. Now here's the contradiction most people never examine. If money truly made people bad, why do people become worse under financial stress? Why does scarcity amplify fear, anger, and selfishness? Because money doesn't change character. Pressure reveals it. Money simply removes pressure, and removal of pressure gives people space to become more of who they already are. So if you fear money will make you someone else, what you're really afraid of is visibility, being seen, being judged, being exposed. Now let's talk about the internal conflict this creates. Chapter of you wants freedom, stability, options. Another chapter of you wants to remain good, humble, accepted. When these values clash, the nervous system chooses safety. And safety often looks like staying broke, but morally intact. This is why some people sabotage progress right before a breakthrough. They feel internal resistance, guilt, unease, not because success is wrong, but because it threatens an old identity. Now pause. Ask yourself honestly, what negative traits do I associate with wealth? Write them down mentally. Greedy, disconnected, arrogant, lonely. Those associations are not facts. They are stories, and stories shape behavior. Now here's the reframe that cleans this layer. Money doesn't amplify who you pretend to be. It amplifies who you are when pressure is gone. If you are thoughtful, you become more generous. If you are curious, you become more expansive. If you value peace, you protect it better. Money does not create character. It removes the constraints hiding it. Now let's talk about permission. Many people are waiting for permission to want more, permission to enjoy, permission to expand, permission to choose ease. This audiobook is that permission. You are allowed to want stability and integrity, ease and depth, wealth and humanity. They are not opposites. They only feel that way when your mind is cluttered. In the next chapter, we're going to uncover the fifth layer of mental contamination, the one that keeps people constantly preparing but never starting. This layer wears the mask of patience, but it's actually fear dressed as wisdom, and it's time to clean it out. Chapter 6, I'm just waiting for the right time. The preparation trap. This contamination is subtle. It doesn't sound like fear, it sounds like maturity. I'm not ready yet. I need to learn more first. I'll start once things settle down. I just need a better plan. Preparation feels responsible. But when preparation never ends, it becomes a prison. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are not stuck because they lack information. They are stuck because information has become a hiding place. Let's slow this down. The mind loves preparation because preparation feels productive without being risky. You can read, research, watch, plan, all without exposing yourself to uncertainty. Preparation gives you the emotional reward of progress without the vulnerability of action, and that's why it's addictive. Now let's talk about why this hits money so hard. Money decisions involve uncertainty, visibility, responsibility, irreversibility. Once you act, you can't pretend anymore, so the mind delays, not with laziness, with logic. I just want to be smart about it. I don't want to make a mistake. I'm being patient. But patience without movement is not patience. It's avoidance. Now let's talk about the hidden cost. Every year spent preparing is a year your nervous system stays in the same loop. Same income patterns, same reactions, same stress responses, and because time passes anyway, delay becomes expensive. Not financially at first, psychologically. You start to doubt yourself. Why haven't I started yet? What's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to move faster. That self-doubt reinforces hesitation, and the loop tightens. Now here's the key insight of this chapter. Clarity does not come before action. Clarity comes from action. You don't get certainty, you get feedback. And feedback is what cleans the mind. Now let's talk about why the right time never arrives. Because life doesn't slow down to create openings. There will always be bills, distractions, obligations, uncertainty. Waiting for calm before acting means waiting forever. Now, pause. Think about something you've been preparing for a long time. Ask yourself, what am I actually protecting myself from? Failure, judgment, regret, responsibility? Awareness dissolves excuses. Now here's the reframing sentence that breaks the trap. Preparation is meant to reduce friction, not eliminate risk. Risk never disappears. It only changes form. You can risk action or risk stagnation. Both cost something. Only one teaches you. Now let's talk about the emotional reset. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a small, imperfect move, not to win, to learn. Learning resets the nervous system because it replaces imagination with experience. Experience is grounding. Imagination fuels anxiety. Now in the next chapter, we're going to expose the sixth layer of mental contamination, the one that ties your self-worth to your bank balance and quietly turns money into an emotional scoreboard. This layer is exhausting, and cleaning it is where real peace begins. Chapter 7. When money becomes your scoreboard, the self-worth contamination. This layer is heavy because it doesn't just affect how you handle money. It affects how you see yourself. Quietly, constantly, relentlessly. Somewhere along the way, money stopped being a tool and became a measurement, a scoreboard. More money meant you were doing well. Less money meant you were falling behind. And once that association forms, every financial fluctuation feels personal. A good month lifts your mood. A bad expense ruins your week. A comparison triggers shame, not because money matters more, but because your identity is tied to it. Let's slow this down. Your self-worth was never meant to be dynamic. It was never meant to rise and fall with numbers. But when money becomes a scoreboard, your nervous system stays on edge, always monitoring, always judging, always reacting. This creates emotional volatility. And emotional volatility is expensive. Now let's talk about how this contamination forms. It often starts innocently. Grades, performance reviews, bonuses, promotions. You learn early that numbers equal value. So when money enters adulthood, your brain uses it the same way. Higher balance equals winning. Lower balance equals failing. The problem? Money fluctuates. So your self-worth fluctuates with it. Now let's talk about the behaviors this creates. You overspend after success to lock in the feeling of winning. You avoid looking at finances during setbacks. To avoid feeling like a failure, you hesitate to invest because losing feels like losing yourself. None of this is logical. It's emotional. Now here's the key insight of this chapter. When money measures your worth, you will always feel behind because someone will always have more, because numbers always change, because comparison never ends. This is why even wealthy people feel empty. They won the game, but never questioned why they were playing it. Now pause. Ask yourself honestly, how often does money affect your mood? How often does it influence how you talk to yourself? Those reactions are signals, not flaws. They show you where cleaning is needed. Now let's talk about detachment. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means separation, separating who you are from what you currently have. When that separation exists, money becomes easier to manage because decisions are no longer loaded with identity. You don't protect ego, you protect structure. Now here's the reframing sentence that dissolves this layer. Money is feedback, not judgment. Feedback tells you where you are. Judgment tells you who you are. One is useful, the other is toxic. Now let's talk about peace. When self-worth is detached from money, calm appears. You can look at numbers without panic. You can plan without shame. You can adjust without self-attack. And calm is clarity. Clarity is leverage. Now in the next chapter, we're going to uncover the 7th layer of mental contamination, the one that keeps people emotionally loyal to struggle, even when they say they want more. This layer hides in pride, and cleaning it requires honesty. Hang on a sec. Hey there, dear viewers, write in the comments what you'd like us to talk about in the next video. We promise to read all the comments and pick the best and most relevant topics. Thanks. Chapter 8, Emotional Loyalty to Struggle, the Pride Contamination. This layer is the hardest to admit because it doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like strength. Pride, the pride of surviving, the pride of enduring, the pride of making it through. You've been through pressure. You've handled scarcity. You've learned to function under stress. And somewhere along the way, struggle became chapter of your identity, not consciously, emotionally. So when ease starts to appear, something inside resists, not because you don't want better, but because better threatens the story you tell yourself about who you are. Let's slow this down. If you've spent years being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who holds it together, then struggle validates your worth. It proves resilience. It proves toughness. It proves capability. And letting go of struggle can feel like letting go of meaning. This is the contamination. When struggle becomes proof of value, ease feels undeserved. So what does the mind do? It creates friction. It complicates progress. It reintroduces stress, not intentionally, automatically. Now let's talk about how this shows up financially. You choose harder paths even when easier ones exist. You overwork when leverage is available. You reject support. You resist delegation. You downplay opportunities. Because deep down, chapter of you believes if it's not hard, it doesn't count. That belief is expensive. Now let's talk about where this pride comes from. Often it was necessary once. You had to be strong. You had to endure. There was no alternative. That strength saved you. But strength that isn't updated becomes limitation. Survival skills are not growth skills. And when you confuse the two, you stay in survival mode long after it's needed. Now pause. Ask yourself honestly, who would I be without struggle? That question scares people because struggle has been the framework, the context, the justification. Without it, there's quiet. And quiet feels empty until you learn to fill it with intention. Now here's the key insight of this chapter. You don't honor your past by repeating it. You honor it by outgrowing it. Struggle does not deserve loyalty. It deserves gratitude and release. Now let's talk about cleaning this layer. Cleaning does not mean rejecting your story. It means updating it. You don't stop being strong. You stop proving it through suffering. You allow ease without guilt. You accept that growth can be calm, that progress can be quiet, that success doesn't need to hurt. This is a radical shift. Now here's the reframing sentence that dissolves pride-based struggle. Ease is not weakness. It is efficiency after learning. You earned it. Now in the next chapter, we're going to address the 8th layer of mental contamination, the one that keeps people distracted, fragmented, and mentally exhausted before they ever get a chance to build. This layer lives in attention, and cleaning it is where momentum finally appears. Chapter 9. Attention, debt. Why your mind never has space. Before money ever becomes stable, attention must become clean. This is the layer almost no one talks about because it's invisible, normalized, and constantly reinforced. Your mind is tired not because you think too much. It's tired because it never finishes a thought. Notifications, content, news, opinions, comparisons. Your attention is fragmented into pieces too small to build anything meaningful. This is attention debt, and attention debt makes wealth impossible. Let's slow this down. Money requires focus, delayed gratification, strategic thinking, emotional regulation. All of those require uninterrupted attention, but modern life trains the opposite. Constant switching, micro rewards, endless stimulation. So even when you have good ideas, you don't have the mental space to execute them. Not because you lack discipline, but because your attention is leased out to everything else. Now let's talk about how this contamination forms. It starts harmlessly. A phone, a scroll, a break. But breaks turn into habits. Habits turn into defaults. Defaults shape identity. Soon, stillness feels uncomfortable. Silence feels empty. Focus feels heavy. So you escape into more stimulation. This keeps the mind noisy. And noisy minds don't build systems. They chase relief. Now let's talk about the financial cost. Fragmented attention leads to impulse spending, abandoned plans, inconsistent action, emotional decisions. Not because you're impulsive, but because your mind is constantly overstimulated. You're always reacting, rarely choosing. Now here's the key insight of this chapter. Wealth requires boredom. Not boredom as emptiness, but boredom as absence of noise. The space where long-term thinking happens. The space where patterns become visible. The space where clarity forms. Most people never reach that space. They fill every gap. Now pause. When was the last time you sat without input? No phone, no content, no distraction. If that feels uncomfortable, that's not a flaw. It's a signal. Your mind is addicted to stimulation, and addiction steals attention. Now let's talk about cleaning this layer. Cleaning attention does not mean deleting everything. It means creating protected silence. Small pockets. Non-negotiable. Daily. Time where nothing competes for your awareness. This is where financial insight appears. Not during hustle, not during noise, but during calm. Now here's the reframing sentence that unlocks this layer. Your attention is your most valuable asset. Money follows where attention stabilizes. In the next chapter, we're going to explore the 9th layer of mental contamination, the one that keeps people emotionally exhausted even when nothing is wrong. This layer hides in worry, and cleaning it is where peace finally sticks. If your life changed 100% in your favor this year, what would be the first sign? Describe it. Chapter 10. Worry as identity, the exhaustion contamination. This layer doesn't look like fear. It looks like responsibility. It sounds like, I'm just thinking ahead. I like to be prepared. I can't relax until everything is handled. But underneath that language is something far more draining. Chronic worry, not acute worry, not situational concern, but a constant background hum of unease. And here is the truth most people never hear. Worry feels productive, but it produces nothing. It consumes energy. It fragments focus. It keeps the nervous system activated long after action is possible. And activated systems don't build. They survive. Let's slow this down. Your mind was designed to solve problems, not to rehearse them endlessly. But when problems are abstract, money in the future, uncertainty, what-ifs, the mind has nothing concrete to resolve. So it loops, replaying scenarios, imagining outcomes, preparing for threats that never fully arrive. This creates exhaustion without movement. Now let's talk about how this becomes identity. If you've worried for a long time, it starts to feel like who you are. I'm just a worrier. I overthink. That's how my mind works. But that's not identity. That's a trained response, often formed during periods when worrying felt necessary, when staying alert was protective, when vigilance meant survival. Your mind learned, if I stay tense, nothing bad will catch me off guard. That strategy once helped you, but now it's costing you, because constant worry narrows perception. You stop seeing options. You stop noticing timing. You stop recognizing opportunity. Your mind is too busy guarding imaginary fires to notice open doors. Now let's talk about money specifically. Financial worry often masquerades as prudence, but look closely. Most chronic money worry is not about numbers. It's about control, fear of being trapped, fear of repeating the past, fear of not being able to fix things, so the mind keeps scanning. But scanning is not planning. Planning has an endpoint. Worry does not. Now pause. Ask yourself honestly, how much mental energy do I spend on things I cannot act on today? That energy is not neutral. It drains willpower. It erodes patience. It shortens perspective. And short perspective creates short-term decisions. Now, here's the key insight of this chapter. Worry steals the future by pretending to protect it. It convinces you that vigilance equals responsibility, while quietly robbing you of clarity. Now let's talk about cleaning this layer. Cleaning worry does not mean stop thinking. It means containment. You give worry a container instead of letting it spill everywhere. Specific time, specific focus, specific questions. And outside that container, you practice returning to the present, not numbing, not distracting, grounding. Now here's the reframing sentence that dissolves this contamination. If a thought doesn't lead to action, it needs boundaries, not repetition. Boundaries create rest. Rest restores clarity. Clarity enables better decisions. Now in the next chapter, we're going to uncover the 10th layer of mental contamination, the one that convinces people they must choose between security and freedom. This is the final false dilemma, and once it's cleaned, your entire relationship with money shifts. Chapter 11, Security versus Freedom, the final false dilemma. This is the last mental contamination we need to clean, because it sits at the center of everything. It sounds logical, responsible, mature. You have to choose between security and freedom. This belief has kept millions of people frozen, not because they don't want more, but because they're terrified of losing what little stability they have. And here's the truth most people never question. Security and freedom are not opposites. They are poorly sequenced. Let's slow this down. Security, as most people define it, means predictability. Same income, same routine, same obligations. It feels safe because it's familiar, even when it's fragile. Freedom, on the other hand, is imagined as chaos, risk, instability, uncertainty. So the mind creates a false choice. Stay safe, but trapped, or be free, but reckless. That is a lie, and it's one of the most expensive lies you can believe. Now, let's talk about where this contamination comes from. Most people watch security disappear suddenly. Layoffs, illness, economic shocks, family instability. So their nervous system learned, freedom is dangerous. Security must be protected at all costs. That belief calcifies, and soon any move toward independence feels like self-sabotage. Now, here's the contradiction no one points out. Most so-called secure lives are one disruption away from collapse. That's not security. That's dependency with a schedule. Real security is not about predictability. It's about resilience, the ability to adapt, to pivot, to recover. Freedom is not the enemy of security. It's the source of it, when built correctly. Now let's talk about sequencing. You do not abandon security to gain freedom. You build freedom inside security. You stabilize first, then expand, then reduce dependence gradually. This is not dramatic. It's quiet, intentional, boring, in the best way. Now, let's talk about the emotional side. The idea of choosing freedom can trigger guilt. What about responsibility? What about others depending on me? What if I fail? Those questions are not wrong, but they assume freedom is selfish. It's not. Freedom increases capacity, more options, more margin, more ability to support others without self-destruction. Now pause. Ask yourself honestly, what am I afraid freedom would take away from me? Identity? Approval? Belonging? Excuses? Fear often points to attachment, not danger. Now here's the reframing sentence that dissolves this final contamination. True security is not staying in one place. It's knowing you can move without collapsing. That's what this entire mental reset has been about. Cleaning the mind so you stop confusing familiarity with safety, noise with progress, struggle with worth. In the next chapter, we're going to begin the integration phase, where all these layers come together and you learn how to live with a clean financial mind without turning it into obsession or pressure. This is where calm replaces effort. Friend, write your opinion on this topic in the comments. Do you agree with us or not? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Chapter 12. Integration. Living with a clean money mind. At some point, something shifts. Not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly. The noise reduces. The urgency softens. The constant internal debate slows down. That's how you know the reset is working. Not because money suddenly appears, but because your relationship with it stabilizes. Integration is the phase most people skip. They consume insight, they feel clarity, and then they rush to apply everything at once. That rush recreates pressure, and pressure recreates contamination. So this chapter is about something different. Living with a clean mind without turning it into another performance. Let's slow this down. A clean money mind does not obsess over optimization. It does not monitor every move. It does not turn awareness into anxiety. It creates space, space to think, space to pause, space to choose. That space is the real upgrade. Now let's talk about how integration actually looks in daily life. You notice impulses sooner, not to judge them, but to observe them. You feel the urge to spend for relief, and instead of acting or suppressing, you pause. That pause is power. You notice worry rising, and instead of feeding it, you ask, is there an action available right now? If yes, you act. If no, you release. That discernment saves enormous energy. Now let's talk about identity again. With a clean mind, you stop narrating your financial life constantly. You don't need to label yourself behind, ahead, good, bad. You simply respond to reality. Reality without commentary is much easier to work with. Now, let's talk about patience. Patience is not waiting passively. It's the confidence that comes from clarity. When your mind is clean, you don't rush opportunities and you don't chase relief. You let patterns reveal themselves. That makes timing visible. Most people miss timing because their minds are too loud to notice it. Now let's talk about discipline. Discipline changes meaning. It's no longer force. It's alignment. You don't discipline yourself to avoid pain. You choose behaviors that preserve calm. Calm becomes the metric. Now pause. Notice how different this feels from everything you were taught. No grind, no pressure, no identity inflation, just stability. That stability is rare and extremely powerful. Now here's the key integration insight. A clean money mind doesn't chase wealth. It removes the behaviors that repel it. That's it. No force, no aggression, just subtraction. Removing noise, removing urgency, removing emotional loops. What remains is clarity. And clarity compounds quietly. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about how to protect this clarity long term, how to avoid slipping back into old patterns when life inevitably applies pressure again. Because pressure will return. The difference is how you meet it. Chapter 13, Protecting Clarity. When pressure returns. Pressure will return, not because you failed, not because the reset didn't work, but because life applies pressure by default. Bills arrive. Unexpected events happen. Emotions fluctuate. The world gets loud again. The difference now is not that pressure disappears, it's that you no longer panic when it shows up. This chapter is about protecting clarity when things tighten again. Because clarity is fragile only when it's unconscious. When it's intentional, it becomes resilient. Let's slow this down. Old patterns return under stress, not because they're right, but because they're familiar. The brain reaches for what it knows when it feels threatened. That's normal. The mistake people make is interpreting regression as failure. It's not. Regression is a signal. It shows you where reinforcement is needed. Now let's talk about the first protection rule. Do not negotiate with urgency. Urgency lies. It tells you everything must be decided now. That relief must be immediate. That calm can wait. Urgency is the voice of contamination. Clean minds slow decisions under pressure. They don't speed them up. Now let's talk about emotional checking. When pressure hits, ask one simple question. What am I feeling? And what is it asking me to do? Emotion wants action, but not all action is wise. Naming the emotion reduces its grip. This is not therapy. It's hygiene. Now let's talk about environment. Your environment either supports clarity or erodes it. Under pressure, reduce stimulation. Less content, less opinion, less noise. This is not withdrawal, it's protection. Now let's talk about financial decisions specifically. When pressure is high, default to preservation. Not fear, preservation. You don't need bold moves under stress. You need stable footing. Boldness comes after calm returns. Now pause. Think about the last time pressure caused a bad decision. Not the decision itself, but the speed of it. Speed is the giveaway. Now, here's the key insight of this chapter. Pressure doesn't undo clarity. Reaction does. You can experience pressure without losing alignment. But only if you don't let urgency hijack the wheel. Now let's talk about trust. Trust is not believing everything will be okay. Trust is knowing you can respond without self-betrayal. That confidence grows each time you choose calm over chaos. Now, here's the reframing sentence that locks this chapter. Clarity is not fragile. It just requires protection when noise increases. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about what a clean money future actually looks like. Not in fantasies, but in lived, ordinary, grounded life. Because the real reward of this reset is not wealth. It's peace with direction. Chapter 14. What a clean money future really looks like. Most people imagine a better financial future as a dramatic upgrade. More money, more freedom, more confidence. But that image is distorted by noise. A clean money future does not arrive loudly. It arrives quietly, almost anticlimactically. You don't wake up one day feeling rich. You wake up feeling less tense, less reactive, less rushed, less mentally crowded, and that's how you know something fundamental has changed. Let's slow this down. In a clean money future, you don't think about money constantly, not because you have unlimited amount, but because your mind no longer treats it as an emergency signal. Money becomes background information, important, relevant, but not consuming. Now, let's talk about what daily life actually looks like. You check numbers without emotion. No spike of anxiety, no surge of pride, just information. You make decisions without internal debate. No arguing with yourself, no justification loops. You know what aligns and what doesn't. That certainty feels calm, not excited. Now let's talk about work. In a clean money future, you don't work to escape your life. You work to support the kind of life you want to live. Work becomes intentional. You say no faster. You choose projects more carefully. You stop trading peace for approval. This is not laziness. It's discernment. Now let's talk about spending. spending becomes quieter, not restricted, not indulgent, intentional. You spend without guilt and without regret because decisions are made consciously. Impulse fades when clarity is present. Now let's talk about comparison. Comparison loses its grip, not because you outgrow it intellectually, but because your internal reference point stabilizes. You stop measuring against others. You measure against alignment. And alignment is deeply personal. Now let's talk about the unexpected gift. With a clean money mind, you stop chasing motivation. Motivation is noisy, inconsistent, unreliable. You operate from clarity instead. Clarity doesn't push, it guides. Now pause. If this future feels understated, that's a good sign. Because exaggerated fantasies are usually compensation for internal chaos. Real progress feels grounded. Now here's the key insight of this chapter. The goal of money is not intensity. It's stability with direction. That combination changes everything. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need sudden wealth. You need a mind that no longer sabotages itself. That's what you're building here. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about how to rebuild ambition after the reset without falling back into pressure, comparison, or ego-driven goals. Because ambition doesn't disappear when the mind is clean. It becomes intelligent. Chapter 15. Rebuilding ambition without pressure. After the reset, ambition feels strange, quieter, less urgent, less desperate, and that can be confusing because for most of your life, ambition was fueled by discomfort. Prove yourself, catch up, escape, fix something that felt wrong. Pressure was the engine. Now the engine is gone, and many people panic here. They think, if I'm not stressed, will I still move forward? If I'm not chasing, will I stagnate? If I'm calm, will I lose my edge? Those fears are understandable, but they're rooted in old conditioning. Let's slow this down. There are two types of ambition. One is reactive, the other is intentional. Reactive ambition is fueled by lack, by comparison, by fear of falling behind. It's loud, urgent, exhausting. Intentional ambition is fueled by alignment, by curiosity, by a sense of direction. It's calm, focused, sustainable. The reset doesn't kill ambition, it upgrades it. Now let's talk about what ambition looks like with a clean mind. You no longer chase goals to feel worthy. You choose goals because they fit. Fit matters more than size. A smaller, aligned goal will outperform a massive, misaligned one every time. Now let's talk about ego. Ego-driven ambition needs witnesses. It needs validation. It needs external proof. Clean ambition does not. It's internal, private, grounded. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to compare it. You just work toward it steadily. Now let's talk about speed. Reactive ambition rushes. Intentional ambition paces. It understands timing. It respects energy. It protects clarity. This is why people with clean ambition often appear slower until they surpass everyone quietly. Now pause. Ask yourself, what did I want before pressure distorted my goals? What genuinely interests me when no one is watching? Those answers matter now, because ambition rebuilt on clarity does not burn you out. It stabilizes you. Now let's talk about money again. With clean ambition, money becomes a resource, not a scoreboard. You ask, what does this goal require? What systems support it? What pace keeps me calm? You stop asking, how fast can I get there? How do I look doing it? That shift alone changes outcomes dramatically. Now here's the key insight of this chapter. Pressure-driven ambition consumes you. Clarity-driven ambition compounds you. One extracts energy, the other builds momentum. Now let's talk about permission again. You are allowed to want more without chaos, without proving anything, without betraying your peace. Ambition does not require suffering. It requires direction. Now in the next chapter, we're going to talk about the long-term mental habits that keep this reset permanent. Not intense practices, but small, quiet disciplines that prevent relapse. This is where the reset becomes a lifestyle. Chapter 16. The quiet habits that make the reset permanent. Most people think permanence comes from intensity. Daily rituals, complex systems, rigid discipline. It doesn't. Permanence comes from small habits that protect clarity without effort. Habits so simple they don't trigger resistance. So quiet they don't feel like self-improvement. So consistent they outlast motivation. This chapter is about those habits, not to optimize you, but to keep your mind clean when life gets noisy again. Let's slow this down. The biggest mistake people make after a breakthrough is trying to maintain the feeling. Feelings fluctuate. Clarity does not. So instead of chasing emotional states, you protect conditions. Conditions determine outcomes. Now, let's talk about the first habit, daily subtraction. Every day something enters your mind that doesn't belong there. An opinion, a comparison, a fear, a narrative. Instead of adding affirmations, you remove interference. At the end of the day, ask, what thought drained me today that I don't need to carry forward? Let it go deliberately. Subtraction is more powerful than addition. Now let's talk about the second habit, delayed reaction. When something triggers you financially, a bill, a message, a number, do not act immediately. Not because action is wrong, but because reaction is expensive. Delay gives your nervous system time to settle. Settled systems choose better. Even a short pause changes outcomes. Now let's talk about the third habit, weekly perspective reset. Once a week, zoom out. Ask, what actually matters right now? What is noise? What am I overestimating? This prevents small issues from hijacking your mental bandwidth. Most stress comes from lack of perspective, not lack of resources. Now let's talk about the fourth habit, intentional boredom. Create moments where nothing is optimized. No content, no productivity, no improvement, just stillness. This is not laziness. It's mental hygiene. Stillness allows subconscious integration. This is where insights settle. Now let's talk about the fifth habit, language awareness. Notice how you speak about money, not to censor, but to observe. Words reveal beliefs. Beliefs shape behavior. When language softens, behavior follows. Now pause. Notice how none of these habits are dramatic. That's the point. Dramatic habits require motivation. Quiet habits require alignment. Now here's the key insight of this chapter. You don't protect clarity by doing more. You protect it by interfering less. Less noise, less urgency, less self-attack. That's how this reset becomes permanent. In the final chapter, we're going to close this audiobook properly, not with hype, not with pressure, but with a grounded reminder of who you are now, what has changed, and how to carry this forward without turning it into another identity. This is where everything settles. Chapter 17. You are not broke. You are conditioned. If there is one sentence that deserves to land softly and stay with you, it's this. You are not failing. You were trained to react, trained to worry, trained to equate stress with responsibility, trained to confuse survival with success. And once you understand that, something fundamental changes because failure feels personal. Conditioning does not. Failure attacks identity. Conditioning invites re-education. That distinction matters. Most people spend their lives trying to fix themselves when what actually needs fixing is the invisible instruction manual they were handed without consent. Think about it. No one taught you how to sit with uncertainty calmly. No one taught you how to separate emotion from money decisions. No one taught you how to clean mental noise before making financial choices. You were taught obedience, endurance, adaptation. Those skills kept you alive. They just weren't designed to help you expand. And that's not your fault. Now let's talk about forgiveness. Not the dramatic kind, but the practical kind. Forgiveness of past decisions. Forgiveness of delays. Forgiveness of moments where you chose relief over growth. Those choices were made by a nervous system under pressure, not by a weak character. When you see that clearly, self-attack dissolves. And without self-attack, change accelerates. Now let's talk about the most dangerous lie people tell themselves at this stage. I should have figured this out sooner. That sentence does nothing except reintroduce pressure. There is no sooner, there is only now. And now is when your mind is finally quiet enough to hear itself think. That's not lateness, that's readiness. Now let's talk about the shift you may already be noticing. Decisions feel slower, but clearer. You don't jump as quickly. You don't panic as easily. You don't feel the same urge to explain yourself. That's not stagnation. That's internal authority forming. Internal authority means you no longer need external urgency to tell you what matters. And once that forms, you stop outsourcing your decisions to fear. Now let's talk about money again, but gently. With a clean mind, money stops feeling like a verdict. It becomes a signal about structure, a signal about timing, a signal about alignment. Signals are useful. Verdicts are paralyzing. This is why clarity feels lighter than motivation. Motivation pushes, clarity guides. Now pause for a moment. Notice how different this feels from every get-rich message you've ever heard. No rush, no pressure, no identity inflation, just orientation. Orientation is rare and extremely valuable. Now here's the sentence that matters in this chapter. You don't need to become someone new. You need to stop living under instructions that were never written for you. That's the reset. Not reinvention, not performance. Release. In the final chapter, we're going to close this audiobook properly, not by telling you what to do next, but by anchoring what you now know, so it stays with you quietly, long after this narration ends. This is not an ending. It's a recalibration, and it deserves a calm landing. Chapter 18, The Quiet Ending and the Real Beginning. There's nothing you need to do after this. No checklist, no challenge, no dramatic declaration. That's intentional, because the deepest changes don't arrive with fireworks. They arrive with recognition. Recognition that something inside you has shifted, that certain thoughts no longer land the same way, that certain pressures don't hook you like they used to. That's the reset, not an explosion, a recalibration. If you're honest with yourself, you can already feel it. Money feels less charged, less personal, less defining, not because everything is solved, but because everything is no longer tangled. And that untangling is what gives you leverage. Let's slow this down one last time. You began this audiobook thinking the problem was money. More specifically, you may have thought, I need to make more. I need to catch up. I need to fix something about myself. What you've seen instead is this. The problem was never money. It was the mental environment money was forced to operate inside. A cluttered environment, a reactive environment, a pressured environment. No system thrives in chaos, and your mind is a system. Once the environment changes, behavior follows naturally. That's why this reset works quietly. You don't force new habits. Old ones lose their grip. You don't fight impulses. You understand them, and they dissolve. You don't chase confidence. You feel steadier, and confidence emerges as a byproduct. Now let's talk about the future. Carefully, not in terms of outcomes, but in terms of posture. From here forward, you'll notice moments where you would have reacted before, and now you pause. Moments where you would have panicked, and now you assess. Moments where you would have spent, avoided, rushed, or worried, and now you choose. Those moments matter more than any strategy because choice requires clarity, and clarity is what you've been cleaning toward this entire time. Now, here's the final truth of this audiobook, the one worth carrying with you. You don't become wealthy by thinking about money more. You become wealthy by letting money think less for you. When money stops controlling your emotional state, it stops controlling your decisions. When it stops controlling your decisions, your life opens up. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily, reliably, on your terms. If this audiobook gave you language for something you always felt but could never articulate, sit with that. Let it integrate. If one sentence stayed with you, write it down somewhere private, not to remember it, but to recognize yourself in it later. And if you want the next audiobook to go deeper into identity, time, leverage, or emotional self-mastery, say so. Not because you need more, but because clarity compounds best when revisited. This is not the end of your work. It's the end of confusion. And confusion is far heavier than effort ever was. You are not broke. You were never broken. Your mind was simply crowded. Now it's cleaner. And from here, everything moves differently. Chapter 19, What Happens After the Reset? The Long Game. After clarity settles, something unexpected happens. Life doesn't suddenly become easier, but it becomes simpler, and simplicity is powerful. Because complexity was never intelligence. Complexity was often confusion, disguised as effort. Now let's talk about what actually changes in the long game. Not the first week, not the first month, but over time. With a clean money mind, you stop living reactively. You stop making decisions to escape discomfort. You stop optimizing for short-term relief. You stop trying to feel caught up. Instead, you begin building continuity, small actions that connect, choices that don't contradict each other, systems that don't require constant emotional input. This is how momentum forms without burnout. Now let's talk about patience again, but differently. Patience is no longer something you force. It becomes natural because you can finally see farther. When the mind is quiet, time expands. You realize you don't need to rush because you're no longer running from anything. That's when compounding begins to work for you. Now let's talk about identity in the long game. You stop asking, what kind of person am I trying to be? And start asking, what kind of life am I building momentum toward? That shift removes pressure. Identity becomes an outcome, not a performance. Now let's talk about setbacks. They still happen, but they land differently. A setback no longer feels like a verdict. It feels like data. You don't spiral, you adjust. That alone saves years of emotional energy. Now let's talk about relationships and money. With clarity, you stop using money to regulate emotion, and you stop letting emotion sabotage money. Conversations become calmer, boundaries become clearer, expectations become explicit. Money stops being the silent tension in the room. That changes everything. Now pause. Imagine a version of you 5 years from now. Not dramatically richer, but calmer, more grounded, less reactive. That version isn't special. It's simply operating from clarity instead of contamination. Now here's the key insight of this chapter. The long game rewards consistency of mind more than intensity of action. You don't need heroic effort. You need stable direction. And stability is built mentally first. In the final chapter, we'll close this entire journey with a grounded reminder of what to carry forward and what to leave behind. So this reset doesn't fade into another forgotten insight, but becomes chapter of how you live. Chapter 20, the final anchor, what to remember, what to release. As we close this extended ending, there's only one thing worth anchoring. Not advice, not strategy, not another idea. Orientation. Orientation is knowing where you're standing and which direction actually matters. You don't need to remember every concept from this audiobook. You don't need to replay it obsessively. You don't need to apply it aggressively. That would recreate pressure. Instead, remember this. You learned how to recognize contamination, not eliminate uncertainty. Uncertainty is chapter of life. Contamination is optional. When you feel rushed, pause. When you feel pressured, slow down. When money feels emotional, separate signal from story. Those 3 moves are enough. Now let's talk about what to release. Release the idea that you're behind. Release the belief that stress equals seriousness. Release the identity built around struggle. Those were coping mechanisms, not truths. They helped you survive, but they don't need to lead anymore. Now let's talk about trust. Real trust, not optimism, not blind faith. Trust in your ability to respond without panic. That's the deepest form of confidence. Now, here is the final sentence of this audiobook. Not as a punchline, but as an anchor. Your life does not change when you make more money. It changes when money stops disturbing your mind. That's the reset. That's the mastery. That's the quiet power most people never reach because they're too busy chasing noise. You don't need to rush from here. Let this settle. And when you're ready, if you want the next audiobook to go deeper into time, discipline, identity, or emotional self-mastery, say the word, not because you're lacking, but because clarity compounds best when it's revisited with intention. This chapter closes the audiobook. What comes next is lived, not narrated. Chapter 21. When the world pulls you back, staying clean in a dirty system. There will be moments, quiet at first, when the world tries to pull you back, not aggressively, not obviously, subtly, a conversation, a headline, a comparison, someone else's urgency leaking into your nervous system. You'll feel it as a slight tightening, a return of mental speed, a faint sense that you should be doing more, faster, louder. This chapter exists for that moment because the system you live inside is not neutral. It is designed for distraction, for urgency, for perpetual dissatisfaction, not because anyone planned it that way, but because attention is profitable and calm is not. So let's talk about how to stay clean inside a system that benefits from mental clutter. First, understand this. You don't escape the system by fighting it. You escape it by not internalizing it. The system will always shout. Your power is choosing what you let echo inside. Now let's talk about social pressure. You will hear people talk about money with panic, with bravado, with insecurity disguised as confidence. Old, you might have absorbed that, compared yourself, questioned your pace. Clean, you notices it and lets it pass. Not because you're better, but because you're no longer available for contamination. Now let's talk about the illusion of speed. The world worships speed. Quick wins, rapid growth, overnight success. But speed without clarity creates fragile outcomes. You already know this now. So, when you feel the pull to rush, remember, slow is smooth. Smooth is stable. Stable is powerful. Now let's talk about boredom again, because this is where most people relapse. Clean minds feel quieter, and quiet can feel like stagnation if you're used to noise. So the temptation arises, maybe I should push harder, maybe I'm getting complacent. No, you're integrating. Integration feels boring to a nervous system addicted to stimulation. That boredom is not a warning sign, it's a sign of withdrawal from chaos. Let it pass. Now let's talk about choice. From here forward, your advantage is not intelligence, it's not hustle, it's not even discipline, it's discernment. Knowing when to engage, knowing when to wait, knowing when something is noise and when it's signal. Discernment saves time, it saves energy, it saves years. Now pause. Think of how many decisions in your past were driven by urgency rather than clarity. You don't need regret. You have perspective now. Perspective is the upgrade. Now, here's the key insight of this chapter. Staying clean in a noisy world is not about control. It's about selective attention. You don't need to reject everything. You just need to be intentional about what you absorb. In the next chapter, we'll talk about legacy thinking. Not legacy as in money or status, but legacy as in the kind of internal state you normalize for yourself and others. Because the deepest wealth is what you stop passing down unconsciously.